Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the meeting of the Lower Bemerton Recreation Ground and Endowment Fund Trust. First of all, do we have any apologies?
Thank you, Chair. We have apologies from Councillors Wells, Nettle, Hock, Riddle and Dalton.
Thank you. Do we have any public questions or statements?
We have none.
Do we have any trustee questions or statements?
We do not. Oh, Councillor Hocking, are you indicating? Okay, thank you, sir. No, other than Councillor Hocking's pen issue, no other questions or statements.
Is everybody happy with the minutes of the previous meeting held on the 24th of June 2024? Okay. I will sign those at the end of this meeting. Item 5, the annual report of the annual general meeting. This is to receive a report from the responsible financial officer in respect of the trust fund. Steve, thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, councillors. So for the benefit of new councillors and old, if you've forgotten, this is not a unique arrangement. Lots of councils have got trusts up and down the country. It's the only one that Salisbury City Council's got. They're all unique in their own way. So just a quick reminder of what this trust is. In 1932, a public-spirited local landowner bequeathed this area, this recreation ground, to the Corporation of Salisbury. It was actually to the Mayor and Alderman of Salisbury in those days, and the equivalent of the council looked after it at first, and then during local government reorganisations since, it's passed from one council to another, and we're currently the council with responsibility for this trust. So legally, this is a trust that is registered with the Charity Commission, and as a single trustee, the council is the sole trustee, which in law means that the 24 councillors, you are the council, and therefore you are the trustees of this trust. So tonight you're meeting as the trustees. I'm sure you don't need me to remind you of that, but actually all the decisions you make in this meeting are with the aim of supporting, representing and protecting the trust, as opposed to being councillors. In the next meeting, you're going to be councillors of the City Council. In this meeting, you're acting as the trustees to this trust. The objects of the trust are to maintain in perpetuity this recreation ground for the benefit of the public and visitors to Salisbury. Excuse me. So every year there's an annual general meeting of the trust, and the accounts are presented at the annual general meeting. That's what's appended to this report. If you want to go straight to the appendix, there you've got the 2023-24 figures from last year, which were approved by the trust. And the 24-25 figures in front of you are to be approved this evening as part of the recommendations. Excuse me, can I grab some water? Apologies. So, if you'd like to just look down the appendix, you can see the various changes. In summary terms, last year, the 23-24 total expenditure was £9,203, and that's gone up significantly during 24-25, and we can answer questions about that. There are some notes at the bottom that give you some general indications as to what the increases were due to. Each year, as well as looking backwards at the last year accounts, you also set a limit to what the council can recharge the trust in the forthcoming year. So last year you set a limit of 15,000. I think for the last 3 or 4 years the limit was 12,000. The head of environmental services, Mark Reed, and myself came to you last year and said there was almost certainly going to be increases during 24-25 for various reasons, which we spelt out then. And we recommended that you increase the limit from 12 to 15, which you did. But as you can see in the accounts, in the appendix, the actual total cost of all the works that the council carried out on behalf of the trust was 16,517. So it's the first time, I think, in our history that the actual costs for the year in question were greater than the limit that the trust had set. So in accordance with the rules, we're limited to £15,000 that can be recharged by the council to the trust. So as you can see in the appendix there, £1,517, 97 pence is the amount that has to be borne by the council in terms of the agreement the council's got with the trust. But the maximum grant, I think it's called a grant, it's not really a grant, it's a recharge of actual costs. There's no element of profit at all. So of the £16,500 actual costs that the council expended, 15,000 is being recommended to be recharged to the trust in accordance with the trust's agreement with the council. You can also see further down the appendix, the accounts there, you've got the assets of the trust are spelt out, investments and savings. They're very healthy M&G Securities investments and the NatWest account. So over, well, roughly 250 last year, £264,000 of cash or cash equivalents that the trust owns in addition to the freehold of that piece of land as well. And generally it works out that the return, the financial return in terms of dividends from that investment that are received by the trust more than pays for the annual charge from the council. If ever it becomes the norm that the investment returns less than the recharge from the council, you know, that's a sort of tipping point that could spell the beginning of the end for the trust financially. But at the moment, it's a very sustainable trust, as you can see from those accounts. Returning back to the report, I won't go through every paragraph, but it sort of gives you a commentary on the activities of the trust financially for the last year. I should draw your attention to paragraph 4.2. Normally, if there is any planned activity, you know, major repairs or maintenance, we bring that to the attention of the trust in this section of the report. There are no major developments currently scheduled by the council. However, we have been approached by the disability interest group Salisbury to point out to us that there might be a number of improvements that should be made to that recreation ground in the short to medium term. We haven't got details of that currently. We can answer questions. Mark's here this evening if you want to ask any specific questions. But we envisage a subsequent report coming to this trust almost certainly well before the next annual general meeting. So we've been used to only having one meeting of the trust a year, but this is the first year again that looks like perhaps in the next few months we might have to come forward with a subsequent report and therefore convene another meeting of this trust to be able to give you any of those details, because depending on the size and scale and cost of those works, again, that could be a tipping point in terms of the trust's finances. The recommendations you have there in section 6 to approve the statement of accounts, to approve the grant going forwards in 6.2. So that's a decision for you. I've suggested that because we only increased the grant by from 12 to 15 last year, it's perhaps a bit too soon to increase it again. So I've recommended that we keep it at 15. But of course, there is a net cost to the council of doing that. If the costs for this coming year are similar to last year, then there'll be an element of subsidy that the council picks up, as we did in last year. So it's certainly within your remit to change that recommendation and increase it, but at the moment we're suggesting we keep it at 15,000. And then 6.3 is to note the emerging considerations regarding potentially major improvements needed in the future, but that will bring you further details in a separate report. Happy to take any questions.
Thanks very much, Steve. Councillor Rogers.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I'm generally happy with the recommendations. I just wanted to ask Steve, this historically, it seems as though we've drawn down the interest earned on the investment. That's what it seems to be, a history of that. Do you think we're moving into a different period now where we might have to start egging away at the actual capital investment that is earning that interest? Or do you think there, will there be a time at the capital that's invested will shrink, do you think? Will that become a reality?
Yes, we're pointing out worst case scenarios. So at the moment, including the year in question, it covered its costs, but it's not growing. In an ideal world, you'd be able to keep back a portion of each year's annual to replenish and grow the capital, knowing that inflation is going to eat away at the year-on-year investment returns in future. However, it's mostly being used purely to pay the ongoing servicing and repairs. So that's that in itself, I think, will create a time when the trust becomes not sustainable into the long term. That's without any major improvement works. But as we say, it looks increasingly likely that we have to spend big money on it. And if that is from the trust, then that alone will wipe out a large chunk of the investment, and then it will be making less each year.
And Chair, can I just clarify, if we do move into that situation and that capital sum goes completely, then the costs all fall back onto the council general fund?
That remains to be seen, because the trust is expected to be, and legally is, self-sufficient. You're the trustees, but that's almost a coincidence. It's not because you're trustees all of the liabilities would fall on the council. There are mechanisms that we'd have to consult the Charity Commission and an expert trust lawyer to see what would happen if it becomes financially unsustainable. We would have plenty of opportunity while it's still on the horizon. It wouldn't suddenly hit us and be an emergency. We would see and be able to predict, I would guess, at least 5 years hence. So we'd have plenty of time to get expert advice on it. But I think with your councillor hats on, even if the council could step back and watch this trust implode, I'm sure you wouldn't want to do that, because it is a valuable public amenity. All I'm saying is I don't think automatically it would fall on the council, but you would probably, as the council, wish to step in and help at that point.
Councillor Foster.
Thank you. Yeah, related to that, I think, and looking forward, just to clarify, I think is it in 3.4 this year was referred to as a catch-up year. Is that a peak or a sort of step up? So I guess the question is this we've caught up and now we're going to stay at this level, or it was a peak and we'll be back down in future years, do we think, on costs?
I think it's a single step. It should have plateaued now. So it was catch up in the sense that we knew that there was less than 12 months costs in the previous year. A good accountant would properly accrue for it all, but in the time available, we very quickly added up all the costs that we could find on the council system and include that in the recharge. But I think there was only 2 quarters of utility costs, for example. So the previous year was definitely undercosted. So therefore we knew there'd be a catch up where we caught up in time wise. The new cleaning contract is one of the biggest factors in the hike in costs. And that was going from the old contract, very cheap, to new contract, better specification, more realistic costs. But that should plateau. Apart from contract inflation, which is minor, it shouldn't be going up each year in the same steps we've seen. So it should pretty much plateau, we expect, subject to those access works that we're talking about. That clears outside that.
Councillor Hocking.
Chair, thank you. So last year we were 10% over budget, and I'm not sure why we should be subsidising the trust, given it's got £250,000 in the bank. So my first thoughts were, should we not have managed that budget better, rather than let the trust come to us to top up the money that we spent on it? So are we going to recover that additional money from the trust and put it back into our bank account? And secondly, are we sure 15k is the appropriate amount of money to be asking for? Should it be more or should it be less? What is the feelings from officers about that 15k limit?
So are we going to go after the trust for the £1,500 in like this year or next year? There's nothing in the agreement that allows us to do that, and I think it would be a little bit unethical. But as the trustees, you can gift another £1,500 to the council if you like. But as again, I would remind you that you're thinking of trustees in this meeting, not as councillors. It just seemed a fair arrangement. Obviously, this I think is as old as the council is. 2009, we took this on from Salisbury District Council, and it seemed to work well, and it's worked well every year until this catch-up year where it's £1,500 over. It's affordable from the council's point of view, but if you as trustees would like to absolutely repay every penny that the council's expended to maintain the asset, that's up to yourselves. Whether the allowance for 25-26, so recommendation 6.2, as I say, I would as the RFO of the council, I would definitely say you should up that beyond 15,000 to a more realistic figure. But it just seems a little unfair that it's gone from 12,000. Yeah, from the trust point of view, it went up from 12,000 to 15,000. You accepted our recommendation. We'd underestimated the increase, so we were wrong as officers by £1,500. To then go from 12,000 to 15 to then say 18 just seems a big hike, but it does reflect reality. Your other question about should we have managed the budget better? The council maintains the parks, its own parks, as well as this park, at a fairly consistent high standard. I don't think Mark was trying to cut corners with Bemerton in Bemerton Recreation. Question is, should he have? I don't think that would have gone down well with local residents. So the only way we could have managed the budget to within 15,000 is to have reduced the service specification of cleaning the toilets there or cutting the grass. And we were never given any direction to do that. So each year we just add up and we come back to you, and it's always been less than your maximum. However, this is the first year it was slightly more than your maximum.
So I'm not suggesting some of that. I'm saying is the trust with all this money in is there for a particular reason, and it's that money we should be spending on that particular project. We shouldn't be spending the city council's money. And part of the reason why the finances of the council got to where they were is because everybody said it's okay, the council can afford it. This time it happens to be 1,500 quid, but other times it's been hundreds of thousands. So yeah, it might only be 1,500 quid, but that's not the point. It's the financial management is what I'm concerned about. 1,500 quid here, 1,500 quid there, yada, yada, yada. And all of a sudden, oh my God, there's only 400k left in the general reserve. So if the money in that trust is to work on that particular project, then that's what it should be for. We should not be using anybody else's money to subsidize it, period. So I'd like someone to manage that budget this year. So if it looks like it's going to go over the £15,000, someone says, no, sorry, you can't do that. Or you have to come back to the trustees and ask for some more money. But I'm not in favour of our taxpayers subsidising a trust which has got £250,000 quid in it that actually uses 15 grand a year. That's my point. Thank you.
But when you said our taxpayers, that was as the councillor, not as the trustee.
I say taxpayers, I mean this city's taxpayers precept should not go towards subsidising this project when there's enough money in the trust's account to cover that cost with ease and more.
Councillor Bolwell.
Thank you, Chair. Going back to what you were saying earlier about we could do another meeting once we had costings for the Lower Bemerton and what digs are looking to do. I did the Lower Bemerton audit with Councillor Nettle and Kes and Mark Annetts, and we discussed the different options and what we'd like to see done. Bearing in mind, I'm inclined to agree with Sven here. Originally, it would have come to the council to say, are you happy to spend X amount of money in the budget to upgrade this park? Now that we've just heard that they've got £250,000 just sat there, and it's their park and it's their part of the river, would other trustees around this table agree that the upgrade should come from the Lower Bemerton Trust? That was an open question. Feel free to agree.
Councillor Corbyn.
Hello. In light of what everybody has just said, I'd like to add a 6.4. And now's probably a good time to add it, to say that as it's got so much and it's coffers, that the money be extracted for the disability interest group for their project so that it actually happens now, because it's not going to affect anything we do because it's money that's already there. So it's kind of an easy win, isn't it? Once Kez has said what is on the wish list, if it's possible. So we can add in, I'm not quite sure, I'm not quite sure how it would be best worded, but 6.4 should be that an accessibility amount of whatever the benchmark is to keep it within the finances so it doesn't go bust, obviously, but to make sure that a disability project can happen.
I'll just hand you over to the CEO.
Thank you very much, Chair. So my understanding from the RFO was that there are going to be further papers that are going to come before the Bemerton Trust. And therefore, if there is a suggestion under 6.4 that you would like us to investigate capital expenditure on behalf of this trust, then we could certainly bring a paper back to a later meeting, whether that be September or later on in the year. And I would just like to clarify with Councillor Hocking, was there a request to subsidise the additional £1,500 or so as well? Was that a formal recommendation or just a comment?
Just a comment. I wouldn't want us to do that. No. I want that money to come out of the trust because that's what it's there for.
Sorry, for clarity, whether an additional £1,500 from the trust was given back to the council?
Yes, absolutely.
To cover is that a formal proposal by the trustees? I just wanted to check.
I would move that as a formal proposal from me if I have a seconder, please. And I do.
Okay, there is a seconder. Just a point of information, RFO, is that something that the trustees can decide to do, is to give the full amount from within its budget?
Yes, and I think you just amend recommendation 6.1. 6.1 is in two parts, so it's approve the accounts and authorise the payment of a grant of 15,000. So the second part would become a separate resolution to authorise the payment of a grant to the council for the whole 16,500, whatever.
Yep, so we have a mover and a seconder.
Okay, so we have the initial recommendations plus recommendation 6.4. We have a...
Chair, sorry,
yes.
Councillor Foster would like to ask a question.
Okay, I was trying to just allow one person, one comment, but on this occasion I will allow you, Sam.
Sorry, and I thought Asa May, I just want to clarify, as a trustee sat here at the moment, is a lot of money at this moment in a NatWest bank account and in shares. But if we do, thinking of financial management, just start spending that, there won't be. And this year, that made almost £15,000 for the trust. And that will be whittled down. So, as I say, it was merely a comment of that is not £250,000 or £244,000 there doing nothing. It is working hard for the trust. And as the trustees, I think from very beginning, our job is to make sure that in perpetuity, this remains an asset, that we don't start on that slippery slope as trustees of whittling that down too quickly. I'm not saying not at all. And I think we said with proposals coming forward, we can look at the full implications. And I just want to say that before we go to a vote of small amounts maybe, but precedent maybe not being set here, because eventually that money does run out. Thank you.
Okay, so we have a proposer and we have a seconder. Can I ask for all those in favour? All those against? Any abstentions? Thank you. The motion is passed. Okay, on to item 6, matters, if any, which by reason of special circumstances the chairman decides should be discussed as a matter of urgency. There aren't any, so I'm quite happy to close this meeting at... Okay, Steve?
It was just to clarify, I thought you were only voting on 6.1, but you were taking them on block, so therefore the allowance for next year, for 25-26, as recommended, is 15,000. You're still content with that? Just making sure. Okay, thank you.
I declare the meeting closed.
We have from members of the public. Thank you.